We have a lot of different kinds of chef and a lot of different kinds of restaurant. But the one thing that we don't have is honest Aboriginal restaurants. And there's probably one or two within Australia. And one day those chefs won't be around. Who are they going to pass the torch on to?
So Dirty Linen today has travelled to Mudgee, or outside Mudgee, back to Tinja Farm. We were here for a week last spring, and it's amazing to come back here about 6 months later in autumn. We're really lucky to be back at the Zin House while Chef Jack Brown is doing a residency. We had a beautiful lunch with Jack earlier today, and it's just incredible to have produce that's grown here, a lot of native produce that Nathan Lovett is growing on some revegetated land here, and to see it beautifully threaded through the menu. So, Jack, I'd love to welcome you to Dirty Linen today.
Thank you very much.
We're sitting here in the restaurant. I mean, tell me about what it's like for you to fetch up here and have a residency.
It's pretty mind-blowing. It's an honour to be here. I really liked this restaurant. I loved this restaurant before I came here, before I did the residency here. There's so much to offer. We have gardens that are full of seasonal produce each day. It's a different thing that you find in the garden. There's rolling hills of Mudgee. It's different to Orange, where I previously was, where you're kind of up in the hills. Now you're kind of surrounded by the hills. It's amazing. The thing I love about Zin House is I'm actually in the dining room cooking in front of all the guests.
So tell us about the setup. What's it like here?
The setup is the setup is probably one of the most. The setup is great because it's there's no hiding behind this cooking. You have an oven, you have a stove. And you are literally cooking in front of all of the guests. There's no sous vides, there's no circulators, there's no, the hibachis that I have in the middle of the dining room. All of my charcoal cooking I actually have to do outside.
Ah, so interesting. And what about the connection to produce? Can you talk about that here?
The connection to produce is probably the most important part about what we do at the Zin House. We have a team of gardeners that work just as hard as everybody else. It sounds really romantic being out in the garden, but those guys are fighting the elements. This morning I woke up, it was 5 degrees. All week it's been kind of raining. That part of Zin House doesn't never stops. And the fact that you can plan the garden and say, hey, I've got this idea for a dish, can we put these seeds in the ground and hope that it works out in a couple of months? Is really what's the word? It's really authentic. It's a proud moment that I have, where I can actually sort of see, small shoots of carrots and then pull them out as mature vegetables, a couple of months or weeks later. It's really cool.
Well, the freshness and the flavour that you get from something that's just been picked that day, there's nothing like it. Hey, like the beetroot that we had with this little salad that we had with the main course, the beautiful chicken, like that. I don't know. It was so alive.
Those beetroots, I've been eyeing them off for the last couple of weeks, and I pull one out of the ground. It's not quite ready, so I put it back in the ground. And today was the day that I knew that they were going to be good.
Wow, I was so lucky that I was here on that day. What about the native produce side of things?
The native side of things is the part that I'm really diving into. I think, for myself as a First Nation Australian, I think that I really have it's my duty to really highlight these ingredients. And the more that I learn about these different native botanicals, different fruits, different plants, different nuts and seeds, the more that I'm doing, myself and fueling my journey.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So what sort of native ingredients have you been getting into?
Well, here we have saltbush, there's desert limes that have just been planted, we have rosella plants, river mints. Nathan Lovett can actually get his hands on pretty much everything, and I was just recently looking for more native nuts. I've got bunya nuts all over the pastures, as you can see, but I've just found blue almonds, which is a native nut as well, which I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do with them. But it's it's a forever changing, a forever growing concept for me, because the things that I'm trying to do is, familiar flavors, familiar dishes, but with things that grow, just in our backyards.
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, bunya nuts are such an incredible, I don't know, I almost want to call them a creature. So for people who haven't encountered them, they're like a massive sort of pine cone with all these different segments. I mean, how do you start with something like that? Like, talk us about, making friends with the bunya nut.
The bunya nut is fantastic. When I first moved to Mudgee, Louis Road, I heard there was a property that had, humongous bunya nut trees, and bunya nuts are seasonal, and so they've literally just, I think the bunya nut season's finished now, but when I first got here, they were in their prime, and they were just so green, so sappy, so beautiful. They're very spiky. There's a pine cone that's probably the same size as a human head. It's there's so many segments to it, and so I've actually, once I've actually got the pine nuts out of the bunyas themselves, the nuts out of the bunyas themselves, I've been using the husks to smoke on my hibachi. The kangaroo that you tried, that was smoked in bunya nut, and it was smoked in eucalyptus as well in our foodra out the back. I've pureed the bunya nuts into like a creamy textures. We've misoed the bunya nuts. We've boiled them and used the leftover liquids for gastrics and for caramels. I feel like it's a never-ending. It's a product that just keeps giving. You can use the whole thing. And the thing about the bunya nut, I've spoken about this in the past, but my favourite bird is the black cockatoo. And when you go see a bunya tree just littered with black cockatoos, just having a bunya party, it's a really beautiful sight.
Oh, that's amazing. I love black cockatoos as well. That makes them, feel even more special. Something, another ingredient that I really loved was the vinegar that you made. Was it from Banksia?
Yeah, Banksia. So the Banksia flower has got such a beautiful floral smell to it, but it's also got this honey-like nectar. And I was lucky enough to spend, quite a bit of time on a restaurant on the Hawkesbury River called the Browwaters Inn. And, myself and Brian developed these vinegars that we made our own vinegars, and we boiled Banksia flowers in them. We boiled different species of Banksia for different flavors, and we kind of just kept developing this technique of Banksia vinegar, which has now become a staple in like lots of my bases for sauces. If I'm doing a sauce that's based on butter and I need to have an acidic component to it, then I always use my Banksia vinegar. The Banksia vinegar is such a versatile thing, and there's nothing else that tastes like it. And from my understanding, I think that there's not many people in Australia are actually using Banksia flowers within their restaurants, and they're everywhere through our country, and they're so gorgeous. It's one of those things that there's nothing that's like it. I can think about, if you can think about like a raw honey flavour, that is probably like the flavour that I can describe Banksias for, but they're really a flavour of their own.
Yeah, it's so exciting to, I guess, bring ingredients that haven't been seen in restaurants much, but then to be doing such different things with them. I mean, can you talk a bit about your training as a cook and how you sort of interweave that with your, focus on First Nations ingredients?
My training as a chef has been. It started as a young age. Like, I think that like my training as a chef definitely started as an expat in Singapore. I didn't know that I was going to be a chef back then, but I was always obsessed with finding something new, tasting new things, integrating what people's cultures were, what ingredients meant to certain people, and also like then, as the knowledge gets bigger, you then find out the regionality of, where things grow best. And I think that when you're a chef, you don't, like, nature is doing all of the work for you. And I think that, when you come out to a place like Mudgee and you have the Zin House garden, Mother Nature is providing everything for you. Australia's landscape is incredible. I was really lucky as a young chef to, train with some really amazing chefs in this country. And they have literally like really set me up with a huge platform of technique. But the thing about that is I don't believe there's a chef out there that can now show me what I need to do with the future of my life in cooking. I think that the Aboriginal Australians who have been taking these ingredients for thousands of years and using these things, they definitely know, and that's probably the next thing that I'm going to look at is probably leaving the kitchen and going deep into the bush and learning the actual traditional ways of preparing these foods. I think that we have a lot of amazing chefs in this country, and I see so many people, using finger limes, using lemon myrtle, using wattle seed. But the bar kind of stops, really soon. Sorry, not soon. The bar kind of stops. It's very limiting, and I think that the more that we look at what we do have in our country and what we have to offer, then I think that the food will start actually becoming more of an authentic Australian cuisine. What's going on right now for me in my head is I'm trying to figure out a way that I can comfortably show lots of different people, what a rosella plant tastes like, what a Davidson plum is, what a bunya nut is, and without trying to be too confronting. I think that if I use all of the techniques that I was shown in the past by my Brow Waters instinct, or my time at Nomad, or traveling through Singapore and South Korea and Los Angeles, I think that the more that I actually connect with the food of Australia, the more gratifying it is for me, but also the more education that I can provide to our diners.
Did you always have a sense that your Indigenous heritage was going to be something that you wanted to express and learn more about?
I think my Indigenous heritage was... It's something I always knew as a young kid, but over the years, the more that I learnt about my Indigenous heritage, the more that I felt like I needed to do it. Not just for myself, but for my family, for the Indigenous Australians, for even for the non-Indigenous Australians. We have a lot of my family history was deliberately lost, and that side of the fence is very hard for me to discover. My father was taken away from his family at the age of 4.5 years of age, to be assimilated into a white culture, and so a lot of the history that I know about myself, I've only really sort of just discovered, and a lot of those things that when I discover them, it really kind of it makes me more motivated to do that within the food. I think that when you have a strong belief in what you do for a living, then you're going to do it well. And every day I go to a table at the dining room, just like I did to yours. If you got the opportunity to talk about why you were doing something, then it's coming from the heart, then your diners will actually really feel that. And for me, I honestly believe that there are so many people that have a story that's very similar to mine, and there are so many people out there who want to know more about that kind of story and what Australia's history is. And the more that I can cook with these ingredients, the happier that I become as a chef. And then it's more self-motivating as well. I feel like there's all of these chefs in this world that I actually love so much, and I see your Josh Nylands and your Lennox Hasties and your Peter Gilmores, and they've all answering their own questions when it comes to cooking. I really want to be the chef who has those same connections to ideology, and those connections to Australian farmers, to native farmers, to our landscape, to modern Australian fine dining.
Wow. I love the ambition and the vision and the passion. I guess every chef is part of a lineage or a number of lineages. There are people that have come before, but I think what you're describing is that, you respect people who have trained you, but you really want to tread new ground. And I think it's with Indigenous ingredients, it's just such a mixed picture, isn't it? Because it's such a new space, but of course, as you say quite rightly, it's such an old territory as well. And then there is all that dislocation and tragedy, and the forced losing of so much knowledge. How do you balance that out? Do you carry that weight of tragedy as well as opportunity?
That's the balancing beam that I actually that's a really tough question, because I actually I go to like my other. It's hard because I can't really even go to my other colleagues, but I do have like a real solid group of Aboriginal friends, and I ask them, like, am I being disrespectful if I do this or if I do this? And the answer is no. Like, cook from what's in your heart. Cook from, like, because again, like, my First Nations background is not something that somebody tells me about, or someone says, "Oh, Jack, you should be like this." It's the way that I was born, and so what I'm doing now, I actually believe it's the way that I was born, and I'm trying my best to create things that are really, really delicious. And we have so many amazing ingredients out here that are delicious. I just think that if I separate myself from being a chef and being a human, like I live these two different lives where I'm Jack as a chef, 90% of the week, but then when I'm not, like I'm just a normal person walking around the bush, just discovering new things. And I think the more that I discover for myself, and the more that I can show and explain like my story, then people start to get it, and people start to understand. And there will come to a time in our lives where it's not weird to put Davidson plum jam on your toast instead of strawberries. It's not weird to have like a wattle seed latte instead of a chai latte. Like that. Like that's what I'm actually trying to achieve. Is like make things normal.
We're here on Wiradjuri country, and there's food that, would grow here and doesn't grow elsewhere. Australia is a massive place. Like, do you think it's important when we're engaging with this whole idea of, native ingredients that we also learn about the regions? Or do you think, as people here living in Australia, we should just, eat Australian food or explore Australian food without worrying too much about what grows where?
It's definitely important to follow what's within your region, because the thing is, I actually do search for things that aren't within our region. But the ethos of the restaurant is like kind of like everything kind of comes around from here. So when I develop things, there's an educational part that I'm trying to feed myself, because nobody's teaching me how to do this.
Well, I think like we can just talk about that. Like, because I think it's interesting. You put yourself out there as a First Nation chef, like that is awesome, and people are going to be interested in that. But at the same time, you're learning, like this is a space that, as we've already discussed, has been really dislocated, sometimes on purpose. Yeah. And I think it must be really challenging at times. You're a young chef, as like any young chef, you're learning your craft and developing as you go, but you've got this whole other stream to what you're doing where you're, piecing things back together. I imagine that must be quite challenging to be like the learner and the expert at the same time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so like for me to then provide answers for everybody when I've literally just provided the answer for myself a couple of weeks ago, like that's also the beautiful side of like where I'm at within my life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like anyone can teach you how to make a velouté, or teach you how to make a bechamel or a crème anglaise, or anyone can teach you, any chef can teach you old French techniques, but like ask those French chefs to go teach you what a blue almond is or a bunya nut. Like the penny drops, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, I need to go out, figure out how I can eat these things, figure out how I can serve these at a fine dining level, and then also provide an education. It's a really tough job to do, but at the same time, like it's so gratifying because I'm learning about myself at the same time. It's like I can teach anyone how to cook, but like to go identify these plants, or to go, forage these plants, or to go, and then go prepare these ingredients. It's actually. It's a forever. It's a journey that just keeps on going, and it's a gift that keeps on giving. It's just
to me, it's just it's so mind blowing that you're sort of at this frontier, but it's the oldest culture in the world that you're, that's the basis for it. It's I don't know. It's kind of devastating and exciting at the same time.
Yeah.
Have you had the blue almonds yet?
I got them in the kitchen. I've literally just cracked one of them open before you got here, and so I'm not actually sure what I'm going to do with them yet, but a couple of weeks from now, you'll see it on the menu. And it's the cool thing is like, I can't think of a restaurant that I've been to recently that had them. Like, and it's not. It doesn't look like a normal almond. There's a furry outer shell, then goes into this deep, really hard, woody shell, and then there's inside that there's a almond that's blue, and it's incredible. So I'll start off by roasting them, and I'll probably go. And again, I'm using I'll probably treat it like a chestnut. And so someone's taught me in the past how to make how to prepare chestnuts. I'm going to do exactly the same thing when it comes to these almonds.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I can't wait to hear what you do with them. Are there any people, I mean, you've mentioned Nathan Lovett, like, are there mentors in this space or people that you can turn to when you have questions?
Yeah, definitely. They're like 100%. And the thing is as well is they're not Indigenous themselves, but they're more in the world of chefs. Like Brian from Broward Zin, 100%. He's one person I always go to when it comes to questions. Kim Curry, who owns the Zin House, absolutely. Like I'll always go to my mentors to actually ask them things, but they're kind of asking me at the same time of mentoring them. So it's one of those things where it's a forever learning cycle for everybody. And I think that the more that I get into it, the more people around me go, oh, I've actually used this in the past, or I've got one of these trees in my backyard, or and then they will tell me their story. I was really lucky just recently to meet I can't remember her name actually, but when I did the SBS cook up, there was a lady from Palawa Kipli in Tasmania. I can't remember her name. But she was amazing, and she there's so many people out there who are actually super knowledgeable when it comes to different native foods, and they might not be chefs, they might be just normal people with normal lives doing other things outside of cooking that will have a bit of information that you can then grab onto to then go give you some leads about how to actually use these things. Sometimes it sounds like that I use a lot of these ingredients blindly, but there's so much thought that goes into everything that I cook.
Oh, I can tell that. So I've got warrigal greens in my garden, and you served today the kangaroo tail raviolo that was, the pasta was green with the warrigal greens, and that was a warrigal green velouté. And I'm like, oh, amazing. This is what I can do with warrigal greens. I had no idea how creative I could be with them.
Yeah, and so like with today, like we blanched the warrigal greens, we blended them into a paste, we then made a pasta dough with the warrigal greens, adding flours, adding eggs, and then we rolled it out, so it was this bright green, pasta sheets. We filled it with kangaroo tail that we had braised overnight in bush tomatoes and Tasmanian pepper and lemon myrtle. Picked down the kangaroo meat off the tails, reduced down the sauce, folded the sauce back through the kangaroo tail, let it set, and then sort of cut them out with pastry cutters and made the raviole from kangaroo tail. And that's an example of a dish that's not confronting, but there's not many people out there that would go, you know what, I feel like a kangaroo tail for dinner tonight.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you mentioned that you'd like it to be normal to have a wattle seed latte, or put some Davidson plum jam on your toast, which both of those things I'm totally up for. What about for yourself? Like, where could you see this journey going? If you look into the future, do you have your own place? What are you serving? Like, where does the road take you, Jack?
In the future, I see myself totally having my own restaurant. I would love to have a small-scaled restaurant. I don't want anything that's massive. I would like to have an intimate style of a restaurant where I can personally go up to each table and talk about the things I'm cooking, why I'm cooking them, and the journey that it's taken me to be able to get these ingredients to the plate. And what I do for a living is not just based on what's in my brain. It's based on relationships that I've created throughout the years and journeys and steps that I've made through traveling, through working, through friendships, and I think that's probably one of those beautiful parts of the restaurant industry in general. It's such a unifying job where when you're in the Central West, your best friends with a winemaker, your best mates with a vegetable grower. I've got Luke Spencer who makes amazing chocolate, and just going out and spending time with these people, it really it makes you realise that everybody's in this game together.
Yeah, that's amazing, that real collegial kind of vibe. And, you mentioned this idea of going out to a table and explaining the dishes. What is it what do you see in your diners when they eat your food? What makes you feel really good? Or what kind of, penny drop moments do you see happen for your diners?
I love the fact that they're surprised. I love the fact that they've heard of them and didn't realise that they were edible. I love the fact that there's nothing really that tastes like them. And so the food that we serve at Zin House at the moment is quite unique to anything I've really cooked in the past. And I think the thing that I really get excited about when people go, oh my God, this bunya nut puree is actually delicious. I didn't realize this came from a pine cone. And I think that that's one scenario is everybody loves the bunya dessert at the moment. But having a smoked kangaroo pastrami with juniper berries and pepper berries glazed with we do a gastric of Tasmanian pepper as well. And I think that when you have this sweet, sour, salty, cured kangaroo in one bite, and you don't realize that kangaroo could taste like that, I think that and it's not just me saying that, it's the diners that are saying that. When you have wattle seed that's got a very much like a coffee-like texture, and every day I churn my own butter and I whip wattle seed through it, and you have it with a sourdough bread. It's a very familiar flavor, but it's also very, very not familiar to a lot of people as well. And I think that the more that people can be surprised by how awesome Australia is, then we can really sort of start making some steps for the future. The thing about kangaroos is they're everywhere. Cows aren't necessarily good for the environment. Doesn't make sense for me to put a slab of Wagyu beef that was grown in Japan or grown somewhere else in Australia than using the kangaroos. Within Mudgee, all of our kangaroos are protected. There's no kangaroo farms. A lot of these kangaroos, they're wild shot. And so, then you have to find a source within New South Wales that has, laws for shooting kangaroos at that particular time of the year. We've got emus in the backyard. I wish they were all females because none of them are laying eggs. But emu eggs, again, another seasonal produce that's just so overlooked. Where these are native animals that one emu egg is equivalent to 24 chicken eggs. The nutritional value of an emu egg is insane, and same with the nutritional value of a bunya nut or warrigal greens, or it's all nutritious, it's all accessible, and it's all doing good things for our country.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I think if I had a magic wand, I would definitely do something about how tricky it is to source wild game in Australia. I mean, kangaroo, yeah, absolutely. Rabbits are everywhere as well. We should be eating a lot more rabbit. But totally see your point about the native animals. You mentioned that that's a barrier to more Australian ingredients on people's plates. I wonder what else you think could change. And I'm asking that because I was recently at an American barbecue restaurant with a First Nations mate of mine, Sharon Brindley. She's got a chocolate company called Jala Jala Treats. And we were sitting there and she was, she said, wouldn't it be great if this was an Aboriginal barbecue restaurant, not an American barbecue restaurant? And as soon as she said that, it was just so obvious that of course it would be better. It would be so much better. What do you think are the things that need to change in Australia for there to be these Aboriginal barbecue restaurants? To be, that kangaroo is just a normal protein that people, buy every day, for their own meals at home and are really comfortable ordering in a restaurant. What do we need to see happen?
Well, that's kind of like my role as a chef is to, help change the mindset of your average consumer. I think that, we're such a young country that doesn't have a lot of food culture as such. We're a country that's built up of migration as well. And we have all of these, just last week I was in Chatswood. I really missed dumplings, and so I'm there smashing dumplings in the middle of Chatswood. like we don't have areas where, you know, sort of Aboriginal people are like flourishing and allowed to sort of cook their own food in a restaurant environment. If there was things like that, then maybe the mindset of the consumer would be a little bit different. I think that I have a role to help change the mindset of consumers, and then hopefully in the future we can see more restaurants like the ones that I've been working in over the last couple of years. I think that if we that's such a difficult question to answer. Am I kind of answering it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Like, I think that if we had, the thing about everything is Aboriginal people aren't actually really given the chance to be able to express. There's a terrible stigma between like our native people and the clash of white people. I think that if people took our people way more seriously, if people could see, if people actually appreciated the fact that we have the oldest civilization in the world living in our country, then maybe there'll be more of a chance. But I see Australia sort of being extremely narrow-minded in what we do have, and also it's not about the ingredients, it's about the people and their treatment.
Yeah, I think it's so true. Because I think a lot of people, they would maybe never have spoken knowingly to an Indigenous person and started to create those relationships and that respect.
Yeah.
But I see it, I don't know, I think there's a lot more prominence with art. Like, I think you could go to a lot of Aboriginal galleries and see art and maybe engage with that culture, and you can't help but come away with enormous respect for everything that's gone into it. But I feel like there aren't as many places or outlets for people to engage with food in the same way.
Absolutely. And I think that if what I'm doing now at the Zin House, like out in the middle of the Central West, I think that the concept really goes well when we're out in the bush. It would be different. I think I'd have different challenges if I was in the middle of Surrey Hills, if I was in, Glebe, or if I was in, I don't know, the inner west of Sydney, rather than the central west of New South Wales. I believe that we're starting to make some really positive steps and really positive changes. I wish that we could see more Indigenous cooking within restaurants by Indigenous people. But again, like it's a small group of people that are within our country these days, and also the industry is not like that. We have a heap of European chefs, a heap of Koreans and Japanese and Chinese chefs. We have lots of different kinds of chef and a lot of different kinds of restaurant. But the one thing that we don't have is honest Aboriginal restaurants, and there's probably one or two within Australia. And one day those chefs won't be around. Who are they going to pass the torch on to? And I think that the more that I can kind of do what I'm doing, I'm going to start finding the right people to pass the torch onto. And I think that the more torches that are lit, you got more of an opportunity, more of a chance to be able to actually say, hey, this is what we're about, and this is what Australia actually is. This is what our ingredients taste like, and this is how beautiful it can be.
Yeah, amazing, Jack. Well, all power to you with the journey. I've been really privileged to engage with your food and your good self today. Thank you so much for chatting.
Thank you very much for having me.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This